Sequel number 64. I welcome you to the Church of Uganda, a celebration at 150 years. I'm the author, Christopher Amos Chikomeko, and today we want to look at one of the catastrophes of the church in the early 1900s, and this was an epidemic, the sleeping sickness epidemic that engulfed the entire region of southern shores of Lake Victoria and the islands of Lake Victoria, the sleeping sickness. Welcome. On the 11th of February 1901, Mengo Hospital got a patient who had a recurring fever. He had tested positive for the parasite trypanosoma, which was first detected in Ghana, and it was from a frog. The Baganda do not eat frogs, and so the question was, how had the patient contracted it? So medical experts were to be invited to come to Uganda to research on the parasite source. But those experts, although invited, they never came until the end of the year 1902. However, the symptoms of the killer disease were the following: a recurring fever, a rapid heart pulse, a skin irritation and leading to severe scratching by one, and lastly, pneumonia and dysentery would set in, and then the patient would die. Unfortunately, there was no cure. A European man called Fode in Gambia, that is in Western Africa, had suffered from the same symptoms of the recurring fever. And biological tests on his body fluid, the samples that he gave, showed that he had what later came to be called the Trypanosoma gambiensis, that it was transmitted by an infected vector. The dilemma was that the creature vector turned out to be a frog in Zambia. Therefore, it was a dilemma for how had that parasite entered into a human, since many societies in Africa, we don't eat frogs. Now, other fever recurring people who were also reporting the same were in Congo around that time, and they also tested positive, and they were found to have got the same vector, the parasite in their body, although they had for them not got them from frogs at all. So on the 11th of February 1901, that Mengo Hospital recurring fever patient shocked the hospital. Shocked the hospital because frogs were not even pets, leave alone eating them. They were not even kept as pets. Now, across West, Central, East, and Southern Africa, people began to test positive for the parasite, and people began to die, especially in Buganda. People began to die in big numbers, as well as in Busoga. Record numbers of people were dying. The cause of the parasite into the human body was not known, and so the experts delayed in coming, although they had already descended on the continent of Africa and they were busy doing their scientific research. Finally, in December 1902, 3 medical experts arrived in Uganda, and they were an epidemiologist, Cuthbert Christie, a clinician, George C. Law, and a bacteriologist, Aldo Castellani. They arrived. The parasite patients were all found in Africa and nowhere else. You could not find this same in Latin America or Asia or Europe. the disease was here in Africa. And in the case of Uganda, it was people along the shores of Lake Narubare or in the islands of Lake Narubare who got the parasite. And as I said earlier, they were dying in big numbers. So Mengo Hospital did not have the capacity to handle the new pandemic numbers. In fact, their records by 1910, many years later, showed that a total of 12,000 patients were treated at the hospital and were recorded. So you can see, if these are the only thousands and this disease was killing almost hundreds and hundreds of people, they could know where they could manage. The symptoms of the recurring fever were accompanied by a rapid heart pulse and a varying degree of skin irritation. The pneumonia and dysentery would set in, and as I said earlier, that's what would kill the patient. Apollo Kagwa remembered that on his return from Kisumu, on his journey from Europe, he had taken a rest at Bugaya Island, where he found two local chiefs, Nova Jumba Mbubi and Muzito, had informed him about the numerous deaths resulting from pneumonia and dysentery after a recurrent fever. Remember, Sir Apollo Kagwa returned in September 1902. And now this is the experts arriving in December. Okay, he had simply sympathized with them, yet it appeared that the islands on Lake Victoria were hard hit by the parasite. Now, at the end of 1902, Assistant Commissioner George Wilson Tayari assured Apollo Kagwa that the experts were all in place, and once the cause was identified, it will be addressed. In the meantime, he told him to continue burying his dead. Every day, there was more than 30 burials in Lake Victoria Islands and over 75 burials along the shores of Lake Victoria, from Sango Bay to Busoga chiefdoms. Mengo Hospital and all the local clinics stopped the sick from admission, as they did not have the bed capacity, neither the medicine. They were administering malaria quinine, which was of no help. There was therefore a 100% fatalities across Buganda and Busoga. By the end of 1903, it had become a pandemic, and close to 119,000 people had perished. My goodness. My goodness. Not even COVID did this to Ugandans. By 1903, scientists across Africa had identified 22 different species of the trypanosoma bacteria. And so the cause of the disease in Gambia would not necessarily be the same for Uganda. In 1895, Lieutenant Colonel Dr. David Bruce had discovered the cause of trypanosoma in cattle in Zulu in southern Africa, being a parasite caused by a vector called tsetse fly. By that time, that was for cattle. Yeah, the tsetse fly would be affecting cattle, and the disease it caused was therefore called Nagana in cattle. So at the end of 1903, Dr. Bruce of Southern Africa was invited to Uganda, and he straight away saw the numerous tsetse flies around. Can you imagine? Tests conducted immediately proved that 14 days after the tsetse fly bite, a human being developed the recurrent fever, and then the other symptoms follow, leading to death. Therefore, the British-born Dr. Bruce was credited with the discovery of the cause of the trypanosoma parasite in Uganda, being a vector called the tsetse fly. The disease it caused in all its stages in human beings was therefore named sleeping sickness. Then, the search for a drug to kill the trypanosoma ugandanese parasite began. But the death toll had reached 160,000 people by December 2004. Oh my God. So our COVID is nothing compared to how we have suffered before. Oh my goodness. Now, Apollo Kagwa demanded that since the cause of sleeping sickness had been discovered, it was time to attack the flies and kill them. Yeah, physical battle. As a soldier, what do you expect he would suggest? Now, the experts advised that the tsetse breeding grounds were bushes, trees, and forests, as well as on wild animals in their reservoirs. So Assistant Commissioner Tayari and Apollo Kagwa issued leaflets in English and Luganda languages, educating the people about the flies. They explained the disease and how it was transmitted, and so advised on the bushes clearance along the shores of Lake Victoria and on the islands inside Lake Victoria. They also advised evacuations of people from the infected regions. But remember, this was just advice. Hey, please, come, please, get off. There was no forced evacuations. So Apollo Kagwa had experience on evacuations because in 1892 and 1893, they had evacuated Roman Catholic Christians to Buddu County from all the other regions of Uganda. And then they had brought Protestant or Anglican Christians to Chagwe and other counties. Muslims will remember we evacuated to Butambala County, those of you who remember those sequels. So the evacuations began, and some 2,300 people from Sese Island were evacuated to mainland Buddu County. Some 34 people on Buvuma Island were evacuated to Chagwe County. In 1905, the medicine that killed the parasite was found, but had to undergo a 2-year experimentation all the way to 1907. Yeah, don't forget that this COVID medicine and vaccine were really a surprise because they were discovered in less than months. But here, people have to wait for 2 years as their tests got to be proved right or wrong. So by the end of 1905, when the medicine was made, close to 200,000 people had perished in Buganda and Busoga and were continuing to die. The disease spread to Tanganyika between 1904 and 1905, but the species of the parasites were different from the Ugandan one. People in Tanganyika could have the trypanosoma parasite in their bodies and take years to develop the disease, while others became sick very quickly. Scientist Henry Scott began to say that some trypanosoma parasite species had existed in Congo since the 1880s. He reasoned that the Tanganyika species had been taken there by the Emin Pasha rescue team of 1888-1889 from the Congo. You remember when they found the Christians in Kabula? Yeah, that during that time. But had remained dormant till then, meaning that the parasite had remained dormant until that very time. So, brethren, that is the disease and that is the pandemic. When I come to the next sequel, we shall see the state of the church despite this pandemic. May the good Lord bless us all.